5.25.
Why did you decide to leave the UK and live abroad?
Well, actually, it was David who convinced me it's a good idea. A long time ago, going back, I was studying at my final year at University of Warwick, and David was working at that time in Mallorca, and we met in England, and then he returned to work in Mallorca, and then we kept in touch by letters, and it was very easy to be seduced by the lifestyle he had there, the lovely swimming, the barbecues in the mountains, the fishing for octopus. So I was finishing my essays in the library windows covered with rain. And so when I graduated, I went very happily out to Spain to be with him. And we both got jobs in Vigo in Spain, working as language teachers in a private school. And we had a lovely time. We worked, and when we weren't working, we spent the time discovering the area, going out on our bikes, and learnt to windsurf. So it was a great year.
So a very happy introduction to Spain for you. And how did you both end up in Mairena?
Well, it was by chance, really. We'd been working as English teachers for several years, or 10 years perhaps in my case, and we realised that we had the opportunity to take a year off, a sabbatical year, as it were, with a view to then going back to teaching again. And we had a friend who had a small house in a village in the mountains south of Granada, and he'd agreed to let us rent this house for next to nothing for a year. So that's what we did. But whilst we were there, we wandered around and cycled around and finally stumbled on this little village of Mairena, where we live now, and fell in love with the village, fell in love with the house that we lived in for a while at first, and realised at the end of the year that we were having a ball and enjoying it too much, really, to want to go back. So at that point, we realised that we had to find a way of earning a living, because we didn't have any money. And so I got a job in Granada, in fact, just teaching for a year or so. And then we opened what's now Las Chimeneas, our little hotel and restaurant.
How integrated do you feel in the local community?
Well, one of the things that made me feel very integrated, and indeed very, very proud, in fact, was being invited to join the local council. And I worked for 6 years as the deputy mayor, and not necessarily a very good deputy mayor, but I kind of enjoyed it. And it was I consider it as an honour to be involved and asked to get involved in local politics. And it's a useful thing as well, rather than just being on the outside protesting at decisions taken after the event. It's quite useful to be part of the decision-making process as well. And
I think for me, the thing that really made a difference was when we had children, because especially as being a mother in the village, it meant that you met other mothers, and people felt that it was a reason to talk, and our children are friends with the other kids. They come around to play now. So, yeah, that was a big difference for me.
Uh-huh. And having the business as well, because people can see that we're actually working, and we're working alongside our neighbours, because, we're lucky we're enough to be in a position where we've been able to employ quite a lot of the local villagers as cooks and chefs and taxi drivers and so on.
What do you like most about living in Mairena?
The obvious thing, and almost the cliche, is the weather. But you can't underestimate that. I mean, the weather does affect your everyday life, and also simple things like the incredible clear skies and the light. Uh-huh. But I think it's something more than that. As long as I can remember, I always had a hankering. I really wanted to live in a very small community. I remember even as a child, it was something that I always had an ambition to do. And I think something about living in a very small village, everything seems very kind of human, very manageable. You know everybody. You literally know everybody in the village. And what's also been great the last few years is that we bought some land which is filled with almonds and olive and fruit trees. So we spend a lot of time down there and learning how to farm like the locals do, because they have very complicated watering techniques. So we've had to speak to locals and learn how to farm the land.
Are there any downsides to living there?
The travelling, isn't it? We have to spend probably more time than we'd like in a car, to buy something simple. On the one hand, it's great being away from shops. It's like a real kind of consumer detox. But on the other hand, when you actually have to buy something, it means you have a long journey, which I could do without.
And there's lots of paperwork as well. Spain is a very heavily bureaucratic country as well, and so there's lots of certification and permits and so on that we've got to get together, and that always means a drive of a couple of hours to get to Granada, the local centre, to get paperwork sorted out.
Is there anything you miss about the UK?
Well, obviously we miss friends and family. I mean, that's the big thing, but we're lucky we live in a nice part of the world, and so we get lots of visitors who come out and stay with us, which is nice. And then, often it's very trite, silly little things that you miss. I mean, I miss pubs with carpets and soft lighting and, polite dog walkers, that kind of thing. So,
and for the fact when we come back, we often come back to London. So what I really like about the UK is that sense of cultural diversity. Just travelling on public transport in London, you're very aware of the very wide range of people living here, which obviously you wouldn't get in a small rural community. And of course, the great thing about that is being in London is, you can choose any kind of restaurant. That's a big treat to come back and be able to choose what kind of food you want to eat.
Do you think you'll come back to the UK one day?
Well, you never know. I mean, we never took a decision that we would stay in Spain forever. So it was kind of by chance, by accident, that we've been in Spain so long. So we've never really ruled it out. It would be tricky, I think, to come back, largely for economic or financial reasons. Britain's a very expensive place to buy a house at the moment. And then, of course, there's the boys. The boys, two sons are now aged 7 and 13, so they were born and brought up in Spain. So they would be really uprooted for them to take them back to the UK, I think, now. That would be perhaps a bigger hurdle.
Yeah, for sure. That's the main reason why I can't see us going back, is definitely Dan and Tom. But of course, I think once you've spent 15 years building up a business, then also that's something you don't want to easily turn your back on.